Yo, what is up, digital creators? We are in the stew with your boy Matsu. What's up, Matsu?
What's up?
So Daniel Craig, aka Matsu, is a self-taught freelance photographer, filmmaker who was born and raised in Fremantle, Western Australia. Matsu learned his creative skills through immersing himself in the local creative scene, capturing the raw energy of performing arts on stage, backstage, and on the road. Matsu is known for his ability to tell meaningful stories through capturing particular expressions with light and color. Quote, Matsu intends to capture the hidden dragon among the clouds. Matsu has featured in publications like Rolling Stone and worked with brands like Puma, and creative for artists such as Flume, Tane Impala, WhatSoNot, Grime, ShockOne, Slumberjack, and I'm blessed to have him in the studio today. What a portfolio there.
Hey, sounds like it's a lot of memories there.
Yeah. So can we talk about that quote, capturing the
hidden dragons
amongst the clouds? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's that's an original though. No, so that quote is kind of, like I'm that guy who like sits on a plane, has his like 7200 by the window.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for that perfect moment where you see something unexpected or see something different in the clouds. And I always, you look at the shape of clouds, and I used to always imagine, even now as like a 36-year-old man, like just once that one moment where you see a cloud, like a dragon pops its head up from behind these clouds, and you're there with your camera and you capture it. But it's also a philosophical thing in that I really enjoy the idea of sort of imagining what could be or what might be, or what is like just behind that tree or just over that hill or just behind that cloud. There's something behind the veil of what we can see with our eyes, and I love the idea of adding a little bit of that to the work that I do. I
think because like for me, when I read that quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like, even as a photographer myself, you're sort of capturing the fantasy in reality. Like you're looking for that fantasy moment in reality.
100.
Sort of like that.
100%. You're looking for those moments that both tell a story. We're all out there trying to sort of tell stories and understand sort of narrative and the human condition, all that kind of stuff. But I think everyone's looking for that sort of moment that you sit back as a photographer and you look at it and you're like, that I feel something from that.
Yeah.
It radiates an energy or a feeling, and for me, that the feeling that I really really like is that feeling of a sort of, it's like surrealism mixed with reality. That's what I really like.
For sure. Because I like some of your work that I just love is the stuff from Japan and that sort of thing, and I talk about it all the time, like on this podcast, is like how powerful storytelling is. So like I feel like the shots from Japan, and also even the ones, there was a series of just walking around Hyde Park that you shot. And it looks like you sort of always use sort of a cinematic lens, maybe like an 85, like a wide open aperture, maybe.
Always wide open.
Yeah.
Always,
because it has that cinematic quality. So like, I guess, are most of your photos inspired by sort of filmmaking, like a filmmaker's view, or?
I think it's been a development. I think like over time, as I've like I said, you said in the intro, I started in like shooting in Mojo's bar in Freo. So it's like, that was my spot. I'd be there like 2 or 3 times a week, shooting bands, shooting hip hop shows. And so that is like, I started, and I kind of had this dream to be a music photographer, and I used to shoot, everything was black and white, and that was kind of my thing. But as I kind of like evolved and I continued working, and something that I'm obsessed with is, like, I call it like feeding the flame, where you like, rather than like holding your passions back or holding your interests back, you actually just keep feeding more stuff into it, and you kind of accelerate, and you sort of excite yourself. And as I went through photography, and I looked at different photographers, and I bought books, and I used to talk to other photographers, and then I used to watch movies, and then I used to I'm a really big fan of like Ridley Scott, Stanley Kubrick, and and you hear the stories of like Kubrick when he was younger, he was a photographer, and then he kind of evolved that into his filmmaking. And I always love that idea of like consistently evolving and challenging yourself and pushing your tastes and pushing what interests you and what motivates you. And cinema is probably my main sort of where I draw a lot of my inspiration from is the way they light, the way they shoot, the way they compose. It's I think for me, in terms of like because it's I always say this, like photography is like and videography and directing, all those things, they're limited by a lot of like material factors, right? So if I was a painter, I can go buy something to paint on. I can set it up. I can just grab a piece of paper. I can draw. I can make whatever I have in my head. I can instantly make.
Yeah,
as long as my technique allows me.
Yeah,
photography and filmmaking is a bit different because you're limited by like material world.
True.
Equipment, gear, crew.
Yeah.
And so I always really, as I studied film more and I got more into film, I really came to appreciate the level of craft and challenge that is in filmmaking, because it is such a like it is. I think in terms of like, I think video games are getting kind of there as well. But I feel like the material limits of filmmaking is what does it for me. But I feel like filmmaking is the pinnacle of like a creative.
I was going to
work.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the vision, it's the performance, it's the audio, the sound,
100%.
set design, everything. And it requires so much of the people doing it. So
yeah. No, I was definitely going to say that, like, filmmaking, it just embodies almost every creative like avenue into one thing, and there's something amazing about that.
Yeah, and you got to try and then like I said, the material limits of it all is like you can't just go out and shoot on a freeway, because it's like no,
exactly. I almost feel like for myself growing up in Perth, because we're maybe sort of limited by sort of cool locations or like things like that. We really have to develop that creative skill to like find these locations and like see the beauty in these locations and shoot it in a way that makes it look really amazing. So compared to like Japan, you got like amazing, you got mountains and the streets look like sick everywhere. But here you sort of limited. So I think growing up here, we have to really develop that. Have you found that for yourself? Or
100%. It's like I go to Japan a lot. Japan's like my second home. I even got it's not a citizen card. They call it a gaijin card, which is like cool. A little card, because my wife's Japanese, so I can dip out and get in pretty easy. Japan, but Japan is like, not only is it a really densely populated place with a culture that's really unique and pretty well intact too. They kind of keep Japan, which as a photographer I really like. But also like their seasons change, like you see in a movie, or you see in the States. It's like their autumn is autumn, their spring is spring, their summer is summer, their winter is winter, and it is so nice to be in a place and see it. Not only see it, but see the people change, what they wear, what they serve for food. The whole country changes with each season.
Wow, yeah.
And as a photographer, it means like every location you go to is this four ways that you could like come back and look at this and recapture it and rethink about it. And that is like, I feel like is probably the main reason I love Japan. On top of, my family-in-law is Japanese. Yeah.
Because, I never actually thought about that as well. Like, I love Japan. But here in Perth, it's kind of like we almost have two.
I'll do it straight up.
It's just like either mid temperature and then summer, which is like really hot.
Yeah, and that's what you get. And like every now and then it'll be wet. And that's what you get. Yeah. I did hear this. So there's an amazing cinematographer from Perth. He's a guy called Denson Baker. I haven't had the chance to actually meet him, but friends on Facebook. And I was talking to some colleagues of his, and one of the things that is kind of like one of his sort of famous sort of lines is that if you can learn to shoot in WA, you can shoot anywhere. Yeah. Because the lighting conditions are so difficult here. Yeah. Yeah. Like I remember I'll just fanboy Japan, but I was in.
I do it all the time.
Better. This is the worst things you could fanboy about. But I was shooting a music video in Japan for a Perth artist, and it was winter, and I swear to you, the sun never left like a 30-degree arc all day.
Oh, really?
And so it's like, you have the perfect lighting conditions all day. Everything looks amazing all day. Of course, the day's shorter, but that day is amazing to shoot. And you come back here, and I reckon you get an hour morning, an hour afternoon.
Yeah.
Where the sun is just in that sort of, nice sort of angle to make things look interesting or to sort of help your shots.
I mean, the mornings and the evenings go hard.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's within that window.
Yeah.
The sunsets go pretty hard.
Oh, sunsets go real hard here.
But yeah, like, for example, if you're shooting, like I've shot Hyde Park in the morning and it's like super nice. And then say if you go down like to the coast in the evenings, it's like super sick. But yeah, with that little window to work with, it's like kind of difficult.
And it's gone in an hour. You get there, you get your shot. It's if you can shoot in Perth and you can make like beautiful images.
That's why Japan hit when I went there like for the first time, because I was like just shooting around Perth and I went to Japan just in Kyoto for like a couple of days and I was like, whoa, it blew my mind.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Like walking through the temples and the garden and the streets. It's just it's just like I said. I think because it really keeps a lot of its traditions and cultures. So you really feel like you're somewhere else when you go to Japan. Yeah,
for sure. Whereabouts do you travel in Japan, or any favorite spots or to shoot?
So Osaka is where my family-in-law is, where my wife Kyoko, shout out, is from. And that's probably my favorite place to shoot. It's a bit small. It's not a bit. It's quite a bit smaller than Tokyo, but it's the second biggest city in Japan, and it's a bit more industrial. It's a bit more rough around the edges. The people are a bit more unique, a bit more lively, and a bit more personality on their surface. They wear a bit more personality. Up front. Where I find people in Tokyo are a bit more reserved and quiet. Osaka's, you get a lot more of that kind of
creative expression, or
it's like you can go. There's a place I really like going, and as time goes on, and this is part of one of my projects, Osaka Dreaming, is what I really like. Oh, that's my producer. Hold up. Do you pause it or should I answer this? Oh, no, I'll just ignore it, dude.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Kate. I'm just gonna ignore you. I didn't put I'm podcasting in my calendar actually. Now that I think about it. Rip.
Oh. We can cut that out.
Yeah, that's right. So I did so one of my projects, and that was my first exhibition as well, was a exhibition called Osaka Dreaming, and it was all these images in Osaka, and it just has this really grungy sort of like rough vibe, and there's this particular area called Shinsekai, which is like it's like where my wife would go when she was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was like the place where all the gambling happened, where all the, the food would happen, you'd go to get street food. And there was a different kind of Japan that you don't really see much anymore. And as time goes on, every time I visit there, it changes, and there's a McDonald's there now. There's like a fancy new hotel in there. And every time I go, I find a little bit of that kind of old sort of, Japan, the old Osaka, like kind of just vanishes. And so Osaka Dreaming is kind of a desire to like kind of dig into those images and capture those places in Osaka that have that grit and that edge that you don't normally associate with Japan. And it's a lot of stuff that, I think Hong Kong has a lot of that as well, that kind of, densely populated.
Old culture
old, where people kind of were living on top of each other and just made ends meet, and they would have big plastic sheets that come out into the street, and people would be sitting under them eating food, and just had this kind of like you never see that in Australia. You never,
Because I've always kind of posed that question on this podcast, like why is there a more like rich sort of culture everywhere in like the architecture and that sort of art scene, like a more, but I guess it sort of comes down to I know, for example, the fashion. So fashion's like been in Japanese culture for a long time with the kimonos and everything like that. And like they've just really embraced, there's more like an embrace of their culture everywhere, I guess.
Well, they've been really like, I'm not an expert in Japan by any means. Don't Google
we'll
me.
Don't
fact check me, dude, on anything I say. But they are pretty, like they were quite sort of withdrawn for a long time. And so they kept, themselves quite isolated. And so I think their sense of identity and culture is quite strong, and they really treasure their history, and they treasure their roots, and they treasure like who they are, and so I think you see that in their sort of like how that the country has kind of kept its character, which I really like. Because I went to, an example is I went to France just before like all COVID business went down. I went to France. And Amsterdam is incredible, by the way. Bro. Oh my god, dude! Like that place is, I could live there, no problem.
Well, yeah,
dude, it's such a sick place. But France, I got into Paris, and me and my wife were. I don't know what we're expecting. I guess it's like from movies and from the kind of narratives you have in your head about like what France is like and what Europe is like.
Yeah, we
kind of got there thinking like, oh, this is gonna be like romantic. It's gonna be sick. And I was like, bro, like this is just a grungy, dirty city. Like it feels like I could be anywhere in the world other than some like nice buildings. I never felt like this is France. And I've heard friends say like, oh no, you can't. You need to know people, and they'll get you to the sort of the authentic Paris experience or the authentic like sort of more French experiences. But just being there, and I didn't feel like what I felt in Japan, where I feel like I'm somewhere. I feel like I'm transported to another world where, until I went to the countryside in France, and then I felt like I was like, yo, like I'm somewhere else. Yeah. Like I went to a small town called Colmar, which is like on the German border. Dude, it was amazing. And we were there in November. They had this Christmas festival on where they had this like old part of the town, like 1600s. Again, don't fact check.
We'll fact check that.
But it's like an old but it's like an old town with all the old buildings. A lot of them are still there. And they have this Christmas festival that's like a lot of French people go to. So there wasn't that many tourists there. And the whole town is like decked out in like Christmas things, and they have all these stalls set up, and you can walk around, and they give you a cup, and all the different stalls have like different drinks that you can like meads and like different like mulled wines and stuff that you can just go, and they'll like, you pay $2 and they'll fill your cup up again. And each store's like drink is a little bit different. They all got their own recipes.
So it's like sort of like family owned recipes and that sort of thing. Yeah, cool.
And you just roll around all day. And I'm, being from Australia, I think the most authentic Christmas experiences were always the ones that you saw like on TV with like, watching Home Alone or you're watching,
that is pretty much our Christmas.
Yeah. It was like, you never really got that kind of like, I never really understood that like Christmas spirit. But being in Colmar and like in France just before Christmas, I was like, bro, like I love Christmas, dude. Yeah. And that's the first time I think I can ever remember as an adult being like, bro, I love Christmas. This is so sick. Yeah. And like the fondest memory I have is like sitting down with my wife, and it's 10 a.m. in the morning. There's this old church in front of us. We're at this cafe. There's this dude playing an accordion. I'm sipping on a coffee, and my wife is like drunk on mulled wine, and she's resting on my shoulder. And I was like, bro, like I feel like I was like, this is I'm in France. Like I'm somewhere else now. Sick. This is exactly what I wanted.
Yes. So you really had to kind of get out of the city.
Get out of it.
Because I have heard a lot of people saying that. And it's just sort of interesting because if you go on Instagram, there's still, it's almost like even if people go there, they're not like really experiencing France maybe, but they go there for that shot in front of the Eiffel Tower. Yeah. And then they're still marketing that idea of the France, which is like super interesting. But heading out to maybe the countryside, you really felt it was different.
Dude, it was amazing. And the people were so lovely as well. Like I found people in Paris, like, if you didn't
speak
French, it was my fault too. Cause like I can be a bit sort of gun shy with like using language. That's not English. My missus, she speaks 2 different languages, so she's totally fine with it. And she was like, "Oh, you just try it. They'll appreciate you if you just try it." And they did. Every time she spoke anything, like tried to speak French, they loved it. And then here comes me plodding along, like just totally refusing to like use the language. And I felt like I was like, sorry, fam. Like I just
because I have also heard, because I speak a bit of Indonesian, and like it helps because when you go to Indonesia, like Indonesian people are so like open to like people trying and practicing and just super friendly. And I've also heard that like French speakers, even a friend I met on the weekend, she was saying when she did exchange there, it was just kind of like more difficult. It was more difficult to engage, but it just comes with like culture, I guess, and practice and confidence as well.
Yeah, but Colmar, when we were out at Colmar, it was a little less Like it was less of a thing. It didn't seem to matter as much.
Mm-hmm.
They were more accommodating, which was really nice. But yeah, go get out to Colma, dude. All your listeners, bro.
Yeah.
Colma is
Check
the
it
one.
out. Check it
Dude,
out.
it's amazing. For Christmas, dude. Oh, that Christmas spirit, dude.
Everybody, we're going there for Christmas. Check it out. And also, sort of going back to Japan and that sort of thing. So, like, I saw you used to practice kung fu. That sort of thing. Was that tied to your interest in Japan, or
not really? Actually, I never. To be honest with you, bro. Like I used to, I watched Akira with the best of him. Like I get down with some, Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop. That stuff was amazing, especially like late high school, dude. That was the one. But I never really had a big interest in Japan until I met my partner. And my interest in kung fu was like, just like I just fell into it. So I was a bit of a rough teen. So like going through high school, dude, I had to repeat year 11. Like I remember when I graduated, I can't remember her name, but I'll never forget it, dude. It's like, it's always been on my shoulder. Is like the sort of like the head of that year, the teacher, she kind of leant over me as I got my graduation certificate, and she like whispered in my ear, "I didn't think you would have made it." And I was like, "Yo, like,
whoa,
bro, you just lit a fire." Like, she's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "What?" On my graduation day, dude. I was like, "Fam,
damn."
But yeah, I was a rough teen, so I had some rough friends, and there were drugs, and I had friends go to prison, and I had friends get stabbed, and all that. I was, and to be honest, dude, like in Australia, there's no real need for it. Like, I think you kind of projecting and creating that own environment yourself here, because it just doesn't really exist like it does. You see in TV or you see in the States. And so like I was kind of at a crossroads in my life, and I remember they called my mum into the school, and the principal sat down with my mum and just kind of talked about everything that I'd been doing. I'd missed like more than 50% of the school year. I'd been, hanging out with these rough kids, doing all this rough stuff. And she was in tears, dude. And she was blaming herself. She said, "It's my fault. I'm a bad mum. I'm a single mom. I try really hard, but I just, I'm just not good enough." And I was like, the first time in my life that I can remember, like seeing like direct consequences of my actions on someone I loved, and someone who took it personally, like they blamed themselves for my behavior. And that was the moment where I was like, I've got to do something. Like I've got to. I can't let her down. Like she's, like I love my dad, but he had his own path to follow, and so she raised us single-handedly, and I was like, I can't let her down. I can't let my family down, my brother, my sister down. And so it was that moment. I would have been 16, and I was like, I've got to do something. And so I just slowly, and this is probably a bit of a lesson, just probably a bit of an insight into me in general, is I just slowly started to make changes. Yep. And sometimes you go back, you go back 2 steps, go forward 3 steps, back 1 step, forward 2 steps. And I just started slowly kind of making decisions to try and improve like myself and the things that I was doing and the things that are interesting and where I was putting my time. And so I had a friend Ollie, Allright. He's an amazing rapper, been my best mate for a very long time. We'd been through thick and thin together. He was like, "Oh, bro, I'm going to this like Kung Fu Academy with this guy. His name's Ralph Taylor. Like, it's hell cool. And, you do meditation, all that kind of stuff." And, as a 16, I was like, "Yeah, whatever, bro. I'll come check it out. I'll learn to fight, bro. I'll fling some sticks around, hit some people." And so it was about 4 of us that went. And we started training. And it was about an hour's bus ride from school to get there, about an hour back. And I went a few times. And I just like I said, I kind of started making decisions that were like different to what I've been doing before. And I always feel like as a young teen, and this is something that does really interest me, especially as a young man, is like when you don't have a father figure at home, I feel like you tend to look for them outside, whether it's at school or on TV or, wherever you sort of you find yourself. You tend to sort of align yourself with what you believe are the strong, cool, sort of older dudes around you. Yeah. And one of the tough things at school is like sometimes those older, like cool, tough dudes are probably not you look probably, fast forward 10 years and they're probably not killing it. Yeah. But you tend to sort of align yourself with them. And so doing Kung Fu, and I was working with this guy called Ralph Taylor, and he kind of like opened like my eyes and my heart to like a different way of how men behave and how men, you know, sort of like think about life and the decisions they choose to make, and where they put their energy and focus. And so I really sort of like, you know, I found a really sort of strong father figure in Ralph Taylor, and I trained there about 3 years, and I would be there 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
You know, traveling an hour on the bus, an hour home, just because I wanted to just. I could feel myself changing, like very slightly, and I could feel, you know, my confidence changing, and the way I thought about the world, and the way I thought about, you know,
maybe like masculinity.
Masculinity, and just, you know, like just having that experience. And so on top of that was there was Kung Fu. So we used to practice Kung Fu. The style was Bagua, which is like it's like a form. It's not a form of Tai Chi, but it's part of the sort of the call it the Three Sister School. So there's like Tai Chi, Hisingi, and Bagua. And so Bagua is like a circle form of like a softer martial art.
Yep.
And used to learn a lot of stick work as well, which was really fun. And it's funny because the school was also, man, it's just funny. So Ralph himself, the teacher, was a funny guy because he was an I don't know if he was arrested, but he used to run guns for
like in Perth
for organized crime. Yeah. So
he
he was a Golden Glove boxer. He was a young guy. He used to do some really rough stuff. He jetted off. He vanished out of Perth to China. And there's, you know,
mysterious figure.
Oh, dude, the story gets more mysterious. And so he had a motorbike in China, and he was just cruising around, sort of didn't know what to do with his life. And he said I can't remember the story exactly, so I'm probably a bit of capping happening, but it was either like his bike broke down or he stopped somewhere, and it was at the base of a temple, and this guy came out of the temple and was like, "I've been waiting for you," and then started teaching him Kung Fu.
Dude.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, dude. It's like a movie,
you got to make a movie about this guy.
It's like a movie, yeah, it's like a movie. And so he got taught Kung Fu by this like this mysterious, you know, master, I guess, in China. And then he came back to Australia, and he kind of changed. You know, he changed, right? The experience changed him. He came back, but he could never really leave the connections he had in WA before that. And so there was still some like interesting characters that would be around the gym. And I remember being there, and he would tell me, like, don't go talk to those people. Like, don't associate with them. They're not good people. And one of them was like one of the biggest fighters, one of the biggest kickboxers in Australia, Muay Thai fighters, and he was amazing. And Ralph always said, don't go near him. Don't talk to him. Don't say it. If he ever asks you to spar with him, never spar with him. He'll just beat you all around the ring. And so it was amazing to have that kind of mentorship behind me, but still be engaged in, you still see that sort of both sides of that sort of coin, right? The decision you make as a teen. Like I could have, you know, when my mom was crying in the principal's office in tears, I could have become that like piece of garbage dude.
Yeah.
Who was like, said, screw it, mom, I do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
I take no responsibility for myself. I'm just going to do whatever I want. Don't care about you. Don't care about my family. And so it was amazing to sort of be in both worlds at the same time and see it, you know, see these guys who, you know, they coveted power, they coveted dominance over other people. And then to also work with Ralph, who taught me to be gracious, to be thoughtful, to still be strong and to be focused and still, you know, not be ashamed of who I am and who I want to be.
Yeah.
But not have that kind of desire for power and desire to dominate that I think comes in that kind of world as a young teen. You know,
for sure.
You kind of flip between the two. And so it was an amazing experience. And I meditated with Ralph, and I read books on Buddhism, and this probably connects to the next sort of point about me and my interest in spirituality and philosophy and all those kind of things, because even though I didn't stay there, you know, for my whole life, you know, I was there for 3 years, and I moved on to doing Taekwondo, and then I moved into Capoeira, which is like a Brazilian martial art. which is like, for those listening who don't know what it is, if you know Tekken, you know Eddie Gordo, do is flipping and kicking.
Shout out Tekken.
Tricks. Yeah, shout out Tekken. Sponsor this.
Yeah.
Sony Linkers, but
yeah.
and so I moved on to capoeira, where I probably, where I have spent my longest time in martial arts, and I worked with a guy who's still in Perth. There's a guy called Gringo or Leo, and he was like a big brother to me. And so he was kind of that, after, working with Ralph and moving into a different martial art, I really connected to this martial art because it has a slave connection to African slaves in Brazil, and I'm half Jamaican, so I also have a slave heritage as well. And so it really spoke to me, and it really unlocked a lot of creativity in me as well, because by that time, I actually didn't have a creative bone in my body. I had no interest in art, photography, anything until I was probably 25. Yeah, really, really late. But capoeira, because it has this music part to it, right? So you learn the moves, you sort of practice. We train really hard and really aggressively. But when you perform capoeira, it's like performative, right? So you do. Is
it a little bit like Tai Chi or?
Oh no, it's like a ever see on the street, we see videos of it. It looks like two people dancing around each other, but it's completely free.
So it's not a martial art.
It is a martial art.
It is?
So it's funny because you train it behind closed doors as a martial art. So you're kicking, hitting each other. It's rough.
Yeah.
But when you're in public practicing it, it's a dance. And the reason that is the history of capoeira is one where slaves in Brazil weren't allowed to practice martial arts, but they could practice cultural.
Okay, gotcha.
So they could do like cultural things,
so
dance, music. And so they formed something called a roda, which is like a circle where they'd all stand around and clap, right? And they'd play instruments. And then the two people would go in and they would spar, but they would never actually hit each other.
Yeah.
And obviously they were chained, right? So a lot of the movements in capoeira are based on both hands and both legs working in unison because they had chains on their arms and legs. But what they were really doing is they're practicing a martial art. And they use this martial art in a lot of cases to break out of slavery and escape, which is amazing.
Wow,
and that really spoke to me as coming from a slave heritage myself.
Dude, why isn't there a movie about that? Like,
there is. Yeah. Capoeira is huge there. I'm surprised like in Brazil, the capoeira is like it's like a cultural. It's like one of their it's an iconic cultural practice in Brazil. But doing that, playing the music and doing the rodas, and when you step into a roda, it's completely freeform. There's no rules. Well, there's rules like don't kill the person in front of you, but there's no like organized structure. I mean, you have karate, there's like katas and there's things you do. There's like a routine. In capoeira, there's no routine. It's like completely free.
In the sparring, is there like a referee or someone?
No referee. No, there's music and there's a rhythm. So depending on the rhythm of the music is the speed of the game. And you kind of you got to watch what your opponent's doing all the time, and you got to watch your spatial awareness because you got to know you're going to land. If I do a flip, I'm going to land on that person who's outside the roda. And if I kick this guy, I don't want to hurt him. So you're always kind of watching each other. Like I said, behind closed doors, you'll go, you hit each other, you kick each other, and try and take each other down. But performatively, it's meant to be this sort of synergy to it. It's meant to be this fluidity to the movement. And doing capoeira and playing the music really unlocked a creative side of me that I think I'd kept hidden away. Because like you said at the start, my mum was a dancer. My dad is a musician, still is a musician. So there's always a sort of a creative sort of part of me that I never engaged with as a kid, never engaged with as I went through high school. But somehow doing this martial art kind of unlocked this creative part of me. And that was what the last sort of martial art I did before I stepped into sort of doing photography and doing learning to direct and all those kinds of things. But alongside the sort of the development of capoeira and development of my creativity, I never let go of the sort of the Buddhism that I learned doing Kung Fu. I got really interested in Eastern philosophy.
So you really studied, like you didn't just go into Kung Fu, you like did research about the history and the philosophy behind Kung Fu.
Yeah, and some of the deeper spiritual aspects of it. And that really, again, like I said, from high school, I kind of started making these slow decisions to like try and improve myself little by little. And, you never kind of like, I think you make a decision in your life like, bam, I'm going to try and become a better person. Next day you wake up, bro, I'm a better person, dude. Yeah, that was easy, dude. So I was like, it's been a long, slow kind of kind of development, and a big part of that, and a big part that kind of brought it all together for me, was a practice of Falun Gong. And so Falun Gong is it's a Chinese cultivation practice. So it's not a religion. It doesn't operate like Buddhism, but it's from the Buddhist school of thought. And its sort of core principles are truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. And the idea is that you sort of try and follow those three principles in your life to slowly sort of let go of your attachments and become a better person. And then the end goal of any Buddhist practice is enlightenment, right? To reach your true self and enlighten to the truth of existence. You know, it's a big thing. And so practicing that kind of brought it all together for me. It brought together what I'd been trying to do as a kid, what I'd been trying to do through Kung Fu, my development through Capoeira, and it sort of gave me a philosophy in which to kind of structure how I was approaching life, and why do things go wrong, and how do you approach challenge, and how do you approach hardship, how do you try and be humble, how do you try and let go of things when you're really affected by them. And it's been something that I still practice every day. I still read every day. I still study it. It's still a really, really core part of, I think, my creativity, of who I am. And it's something that it's a lesson that I think, you know, any creative should really think about, even early in their practice of creativity, is like, why do you do it? What keeps you going when things are good, and what keeps you going when things are bad? Yeah. What does it mean to you outside of social media likes, outside of money, outside of all the material things that we say we don't value, but of course they're valuable. You know, you want to know if people like what you do, and you want to get rewarded financially to do what you do. But there has to be something, for me, there has to be something more that keeps you going when things are not great, or when you have doubts about yourself. And Falun Gong was really that for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, just a little, for the folks playing at home, I'm also not a really big fan of the Chinese Communist Party. And the reason for that is so Falun Gong is the largest sort of persecuted group in China. So
I was reading about that.
Yeah. So there's things like organ harvesting that happens to this day. You know, people are arrested with no charge, no court case. They're thrown into prisons. You know, it's one of the saddest and one of the largest non-wartime abuses of human rights in history, and it's so kept quiet. You know, it's been happening since 1999, and you're seeing it a bit more now. People are a bit more vocal about it, but still very much the Chinese Communist Party keep a very tight control of information in and out of the country, and it's such a shame that people who just want to practice getting better in their lives are literally targeted and persecuted because of their belief. Yeah, and it's not just Falun Gong. It's, there's the Uyghur Muslims that are heavily persecuted. Christianity really struggles in there. The Catholics. So and it's I think it's really sad that you have a government that targets people based on their beliefs. I think it's criminal, and I think anyone that listens to this podcast should check it out, have a look into it.
100%. Yeah.
And sort of see what happens when a government has all the power and you can't really question it, and the kind of things that it does to people. It's like I said, it's criminal. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's a terrible thing. Yeah,
it really makes me appreciate living in Australia and how good we have it here.
100%.
Because I was reading about that. So basically, what I researched was Falun Gong started in the 1990s, but then the Chinese Communist Party began seeing it as a threat, and they began giving it negative media coverage, and then by 1999 they declared Falun Gong a heretical organization that threatened social stability, and now they're subject to a wide range of human rights abuses, basically. Yeah. So 100,000 are estimated to be imprisoned, and practitioners in detention are subject to forced labor, psychiatric abuse, torture, other coercive methods. So it's a shame such a peaceful, a worldview sort of practice.
Just totally persecuted by a government. And it's, you know, like we're saying, it's when a government has the ability and the power to dehumanize a part of its population, you know, and justify it. It just justifies it by saying, oh, they're a threat to our society, so we have to persecute them. It's like, do you have to do that to anyone at any time? You know, like what a fearful, kind of insecure, like, you know, evil way to view your own population. And a lot of the reason for it is that, you know, in the sort of the late 90s, democracy was really talked about in China. So people were like, you know, like they're opening up to the trade, like to the world. China's opening its doors for trade. And, you know, and so with the opening doors to trade comes foreign ideas, comes Western ideas, and democracy is a big one. And so what's one
and of the internet as well came in.
Yeah. And what's one of the best ways to sort of stamp out sort of, you know, internal dissent is find a common enemy, fund a lot of money into internal security, and make people fearful. And that's it. The persecution of Falun Gong allowed the Chinese, well, from my opinion, again, I fact checked.
Yeah.
From my opinion, it allowed them to justify tighter and tighter controls of their people. So not only is it persecuting Falun Gong, but it's removing human rights from all of the members of their society. And it's justified. They justify it, that we have to do this.
Yeah.
And that scares the life out of me. It's like, what a scary way, like I said, to look at your own population and say, in order for us to live harmoniously, we just have to hurt these people. We have to take from these people.
It's just totally anti-progressive.
It's just in what world and what way and in what relationship you've ever had in your life with anybody have you been like, you know what the answer to our problem is? I take away your power.
Yeah.
I dominate you. That's how we'll fix this. If you let me make all the decisions, that's how we'll fix this relationship. It's like, no, like that's the opposite of how any relationship functions. So it scares me when you know, and this is just a lesson. I think the Chinese lesson is a lesson in general, is just the more power and the more sort of you know, reliance you have on the people who are leading your society, you've got to be also at the same time, you've got to become aware of like things might be great now, but if something happens, if there's a change of government all of a sudden, and when you go, wait a minute, this guy I don't like, but he has all the power, and we actually can't vote him out anymore because he's changed the laws. And, you know, so it's like it can go from, yeah, we'll just keep giving you power and we'll just keep, you know, you can take care of us and you can manage us. You take care of all our problems and we'll just carry on with our life. And then one day you might wake up with no freedoms anymore and no sort of ability to be an individual and do the things that you'd like to do and say the things you'd like to say. And that scares the life out of me.
What do you think it is particularly about Falun Gong that the Chinese Communist Party was afraid of?
It was very popular. So it was growing in like people practicing it, because it's not an organized church. They don't have churches. There's not a structured spiritual practice. It's a more of a practice. If you want to practice it, learn it at your own pace. If there's people that also do it around you, meet with them, talk about your practice and your faith. But there's no church, there's no donations, there's nothing like that. And I think because of what it taught, and I think the simplicity of it, it got really, really popular, grew really, really fast. And so it was, you know, I think by the peak of its popularity, there was 100 million people in China practicing. And that's 4 times the population of Australia now. Yeah. And it's a lot of people practicing it. And
do you think it was something to do with like freedom of thought and like...
Yeah, freedom of thought.
Critical thinking, and like, because I read that a lot of it has to do with self-cultivation and like improving and like just seeing the way things are and...
Yeah, and letting go of attachments and just, you know, just like I said, slowly improving yourself as a person through the trials of life. But I like I said, I think, you know, democracy was definitely something that, you know, people in China were talking about and there was a push for, and to find a common enemy, you know, to unite the nation around and to consolidate your power. Yeah, that's the way I look at it, as a lot of the motivation for why they did it. Yeah.
Because, looking back at your sort of study of kung fu, or you're saying you sort of grew up without a father figure, and then maybe you're looking for other sort of people to maybe
like role models.
In like masculinities, and maybe you found like sort of the wrong ones, and then you found like kung fu, and then eventually developed into Falun Gong. It's almost like you were learning like a life philosophy, and I think it's important as creatives to have that sort of worldview. Like I think in whatever art you practice, you want to say something basically, and like in learning that, you sort of learn what you wanted to say, and that kind of sort of comes through in a lot of your work.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. You know, I'm you know, I really am not afraid to, you know, wear my passions on my sleeve now and take responsibility for what it is I want to do. You know, I want to entertain. I want to make things that are great. I want to be able to collaborate with great people and produce great work. And I think me being able to say that comfortably and getting to that position, I think is a lot down to that road that path I walked that you described, and you know, and continue walking it. But there's a funny thing with my photography though, is like, so to the point, so from when I was, you know, sort of in high school to when I left high school, and through most of my sort of late my 20s, I always had a mentor. I always had someone that I could lean on. I always had someone I could, you know, go, is this the correct technique? Is this the correct move? Is this right? Is this wrong? I always had that. And then photography, you know, I had a job at Murdoch University. It was a very cushy, comfortable job. It's, you know, it was well paid, and you know, I worked with some really cool, great colleagues there. But I just found it coming from a martial arts background, there's always a part of you that, you know, it was a government, you know, university is a government position, and you have a permanent contract, and to lose that job is like you probably have to fight them to get yourself fired. You couldn't just mess up a one job and like, oh mate, that's not good enough, you're out. Like you'd have every kind of review that you could ever need. You'd have every kind of development opportunity for them to say, no, you made a mistake, but we can learn, which sounds great. But what I found is it kind of, coming from a martial arts background where you're constantly sort of driving yourself to get better. You know, you're still it's not a team environment, but you're in a sort of shared developmental environment where you're all kind of striving to get better, but it's not a sport or a practice where you guys are doing it together. You know, like a team sport where you're like, if we get better at kicking this ball between us, our team will win. It's like you're kind of, everyone's on their own individual journey, and you sort of help each other on these individual journeys. Yep. And so being in a government office job, oh dude, it killed me. You know, like there was no incentive to get better. There's no need to push yourself. You know, you would, you know, it and it kind of, for me, within myself, it fostered a kind of a sterile internal environment where I wasn't striving forward anymore. And to do that for a couple of years, I really struggled with it. And then I had a friend, Alright, the guy I mentioned before, he's like one of my best mates from high school. He's a rapper, very active in the Perth hip hop scene. And he was like, dude, like you should see this camera, the 5D Mark II. It's bro, it's amazing. It's so good. You should buy one, dude. And you know, one of the good things about having a government job is it pays well. So I had some, so you know, I guess there's a trade off there. If you're not interested in, you know, if you want to just chill out during the week and get some money, and on the weekend go do some business, then a government job's great. But if you're, you know, if you want to, you know, sort of be on top of things and be constantly trying to challenge yourself and battle your way through life, then I think, you know, freelance is freelance is the way.
No like safety net or there's no one telling you what to do, which is like, it's good because of the freedom, but then you need like self motivation and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's sink or swim. If you don't have the motivation, if you don't have the ability, then you won't. The character, if you don't have those things, then you won't do well. And I think I learned that it's actually a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It might sometimes feel like trash, but the long term advantage of it, I think, is really good. But yeah, so my homie Ollie sort of told me about this camera. I bought this camera.
went out to Mojo's, started shooting hip hop gigs.
5D's a goat camera.
Oh, 5D2, bro. That was the one, man. It was like
sick.
Yeah, it was the camera that changed the game. You know, it was like, oh, you just flip this button and you shoot video, or like it's a hell good video, dude. And full frame, like
yeah.
Oh, dude, it was such a good camera. And I had no idea how to use it, by the way. Like I I bought it, sat on my shelf for about 2 months until I was like, bro, I just spent like a whole bunch of money on this. I better learn how to use it. And I remember being in Mojo's and I was like shooting the show, and I had this like, I had the 24 to 105 on, you know, the f4 lens.
Yep.
Real, like it's a good lens, but man, shooting
at night,
bro,
in Mojo's, dark Mojo's. So, yeah.
No, and I had no idea. I didn't know what f-stop meant. I didn't know what shutter. I had no idea what any of it meant. And I was like struggling. My photos were hell blurry, and I was like, bro, I'm so trash at this. And this guy saw me, and he's like, he's just this Brazilian dude. I can't remember his name. And that's the only time I ever saw him. He was doing video. And he's like, bro, what are you shooting on? And I was like, oh, it's a 5D, but like all my photos are blurry. And he like looked at my lens, and he's like, you got a different lens? And I was like, yeah, I got this like 50 1.4.
Hey, shout out the 50.
Hey, and he was like, no, he put that on. He took the lens off. He put the 50 on. He changed some settings.
Boom.
And he said, here, shoot with this. And that was like my first and only real ever lesson in photography.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, I shot like a beast, dude. I just lost myself to photography, and I was in there all the time. And one of my favorite things to do was like shoot portraits of people, like candid portraits of the people in the back of Mojo's. And Mojo's is a place where like, you don't have any shoes on?
Yeah, get some characters there.
Oh, dude, no shoes on, no problems. Hat on, no problem. You want to smoke weed out the back? Dude, smoke weed out the back. It's such a beautiful place. And that's where I kind of learned. I learned to love the little bit of light you get, because it was like 2 cams on a stage, and the back is so dark. And, you know, and shooting stages is real colorful.
Sometimes with that darker lighting, you get those more moody, sort of cinematic shots. So it's kind of cool.
It's the best. And that was my school. The Mojo's was my school of photography. And, you know, and that's where I learned it. And then from there, you know, the journey of Matsu went from, you know, shooting at Mojo's. So I started working at WordPress.
What age was that with that, when you brought the 5D to Mojo's?
It's been sort of maybe 13 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, bruh, probably like...
Late 20s.
Late 20s, yeah. 28 maybe.
And I also want to add, if there's any photographers listening and you want to, like, you know, like you're just starting out and you want to take sick photos, whack on that 50 mil.
Oh, dude, it's changed your life, dude.
Yeah, especially with a lower aperture.
Boom. Oh, dude, yeah. And don't get that 1.8. Get the 1.4, dude.
Yeah.
It's worth an extra couple $100. Yeah,
100%.
But you know, I started working on a WordPress called Wordplay. I don't know if WordPress is around anymore. But it was like a magazine. You used to do like a monthly. Was it monthly? But yeah, we had a magazine that we used to run. I shot hip hop for years and years for no money. So I did this. I reckon I shot 3 or 4 gigs a week for nothing. You know, and I didn't expect anything in return. It's just, I just wanted to get better. And I think what you're saying is that sort of that energy I learned from doing martial arts, and the philosophy I learned from you know, the Eastern practices, Falun Gong and the Buddhism before that I studied. I think just sort of and the creativity that I kind of fostered in capoeira all just kind of poured out in my photography.
Yep, 100%.
And I used to, and my first instinct was to find a mentor, was to find a photographer I could learn from, or find, you know, a group of photographers that I could sort of roll with and work with and get that kind of same experience I had in capoeira.
So important to have that little community, just bounce ideas off and do creative stuff with.
But it never happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For whatever reason, it just, and I thought to myself, like, maybe this is where I go from needing a mentor to doing it myself. You know, this is where maybe I go from that kind of adolescent way of looking at the world, where I need to find the same people as me, or I need to find a community, or I need to find a mentor to guide me. It was like, maybe I'm meant to go out on my own now, and I'm meant to figure this out myself.
Do you think that's possibly a Perth thing, where like it's more difficult to find sort of your creative community because maybe we're like a little bit more spread out, or there isn't that culture of doing that, or you think it's just... I
had a lot of creatives around me, a lot of musicians I used to hang out with, and artists I used to hang out with, But I think what I mean is more in terms of like my pursuit of it became individual.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, I guess with photography, at the end of the day, you're developing your view, and like no one can really develop your view but yourself.
Yeah. No one can,
so it makes sense.
foster your passion or your desire or your ability. And so it was the first thing that I did, the first passion that I had, where I went completely off on my own.
Yeah.
And pursued it in my own way, and trial and error and mistakes and just oh man, all the mistakes. Dude, some of the mistakes I've made, just there's moments where you're like, bro, I want to give this. I'm sure you felt the same at some point. Like, bro, is this even worth doing anymore? Like, and I'm lucky that I had all that world experience, all that story I just for the last 30 minutes waffled on about. The
philosophies
is what
keep you going, I guess.
Yeah, is at the root of what I do, and it keeps me going and it keeps me motivated even to now. Like I still feel that same childlike motivation I had when I first started now. And I was really conscious of that. I never wanted to lose that part of you that's like wants to just keep doing it for the sake of doing it. And then that comes back to the original quote from the very beginning, and that sort of idea of chasing the dragons in the clouds.
Yeah, because I actually wrote down some notes here like about the concept of self-cultivation, which ties into Falun Gong or like even Kung Fu, which it's almost like an instructions to life, which is, you could say, religion as well as sort of almost like a instructions to how to live life. And I also compare self-cultivation, which you find in these religious practices or spiritual practices. It's kind of like self-improvement, which like you were talking about. And growing up in Australia, it's not really, they don't really teach you about self-development and that sort of thing. And I just think it's super, super important. And I feel like, like Falun Gong, it was just maybe, I think I wrote the name of, there was somebody who sort of first discovered or I guess created the Falun Gong practice or philosophy. It's almost like you're learning from somebody who's like been through life and like he has these instructions for it, and then he's like teaching people, this is how I went about life and helped it out.
But one of the core things in Falun Gong is like, here's the door, and here's the first lesson. But the rest of the lessons you have to learn yourself. Yeah, and that's the thing that really,
I like that.
Really sort of like grabbed me about Falun Gong is it's not holding your hand all the way through. It's saying, here's the instructions, here's the door. It's up to you now.
I like that because it's almost like this is here it is. It's up to you to like learn, and it's not sort of like a religion as you were saying, which is saying if you do this, you're gonna go to hell, or like you have to follow by these rules, and much more like guidelines, like not guidelines, but I guess it's more rules. Yeah. And if you don't follow it, then there's consequences. But Falun Gong seems like it's more like instructions. Here you go. It's like up to you. It's your path.
It's your path to understand the philosophy and to get and to reach the depths of that philosophy at your own pace and in your own way. Yeah. And
I want to kind of chat about artificial intelligence, because I saw you posted something. It was I believe it was a painting created by AI.
Yeah,
and I was just like,
dude.
Whoa, like that's an amazing painting created by AI. What does this mean for us as creators? If like you can create something that good, like I was like literally looking at that for a long time, that painting, but it's created by AI. It's crazy,
dude. It's mind blowing. So it would have been with Midjourney. There's a bunch of them I mess around with. So there's Midjourney. Oh, there's another one.
Are they free or?
They're kind of free, but like if you really want to make the best of them, like you really use them a lot, you pay for it. Which of course it's a service, it's a tool. You should pay for it.
The product's amazing.
I find it really fun, and it's a time sink. Like there's been countless nights I've been up at like 3 or 4 a.m. just smashing prompts into the AI to see what it generates. And for anyone who doesn't know how it works, I'm not an expert at all in it. Again, Google all this, fact check all this, bro. But the way it works is you kind of type a prompt, so like a line of dialogue or a word or a series of words. It can even be like an artist's style, and it will feed that to an AI who's been trained on like art history and just art in general, and it's like been trained with like hundreds of thousands, probably millions of images. I don't even know, over the history of the human race that's online.
Yeah.
And so it understands styles, it understands different artists. If you say like, I want a portrait in the style of Dali, then it'll generate you portraits in the style of Dali, but it won't copy Dali. Like it won't go like, I'll just give you a Dali photo, like an image that I've just changed slightly. It understands the way I think it understands. I don't think it understands like how me and you understand something. I think it understands the numbers and the data behind it. Yeah. So it says a Dali photo is consistent with these sets of ones and zeros of this data input.
So like these colors, these curves on the lines, these kind of brush strokes.
It understands the data puzzle of that art, and then it just kind of rearranges it and pushes it back out based on what you've prompted it to do. So I don't think it understands. I think it's like a way I look at it is like a bit of a foggy, kind of slightly cracked mirror that reflects what you say into it back at you. And that mirror has a sort of like a data bank of like human art history. And so you're going like, I want something like this based on these things with like afternoon light, and I want it to be really detailed, and I want it to be in the style of like this famous painter, and it will just, like a Friedrich or something, and it will just like pump it back at you. And it is incredible. Like it's incredible how quickly it does it for like 30 seconds, bro. And you're like, bam, I got an amazing looking piece of image. I don't really quite call it art. I'm still not settled on like, is it art or is it like a tool that you use to kind of like play with ideas? And that's probably, I've listened to a few podcasts on it, and one way I like, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he talks about it as like a tool. Like it's like, if you sort of like, a client gives you a brief and you say you're doing, artwork for some film design or some concept art, and he says he will kind of get the brief in, he'll go into Mid-Journey and like do some prompts, some different styles, and it will kind of give him inspiration to then go do his own art. Okay. So he uses it a bit like when you're mood boarding, right? You mood board like, for a photo shoot.
Yeah, just like going on Pinterest and finding out like a theme.
Yeah. So rather than
it's more like a detailed, in-depth
that you can sort of curate,
play around with.
Yeah, you can curate it rather than having to spend hours looking for that one photo that represents kind of what you want to do. You can just kind of go and curate it and prompt it to get something closer, and then you go and do your thing. And I was like, yeah, that's like I could see the value in that, and I can see that as a cool tool, and so I don't discredit it. I'm not like I'm not hateful of it, and I don't think, you said like, what does it mean for artists? And I'm like, I don't think it takes away the value of someone's ability to craft something by hand. I think that will always be of value to each other. That's.
So you're not afraid of like type in Matsu photography photo,
and then like it's just some AI Matsu that's crushing it. Yeah. Maybe at that point I'd be like, bruh, like AIs need to go, dude. They've just stolen me. No, I don't really see it. Like I don't really see it impacting. I kind of, maybe in the short term, a little bit of concept art stuff and album artwork. I can see it. But I also feel like artists who really care about their music also want something handcrafted.
I think at the end of the day, people like art is always valued on authenticity. Yeah. Like if you go to art auction or like whatever, they want the real thing. And if you really care about what you're doing, you want that authentic thing. So I don't think AI can really, as artists, we're always developing. We're developing our worldview. We're developing our craft. So it would never keep up to date with like our mindset or whatever. It can try, and I think it's amazing what it's doing. But I don't think it's never be as authentic as like a real person.
No,
sort of thing.
I 100% agree with you. And it, you know, that story I told you for the last like 45 minutes. Sorry, anyone who's watching. Is like, I don't think an AI can do that either. I don't think AI can have those experiences and form that philosophy and form its motivations and ideas, and then use those to pursue a craft or creative endeavor. I think it, like I said, I think it's just reflecting things back at us.
For sure.
You know, it's not
just doing what a code told it to do.
Yeah, it's just, and it doesn't say to you, bro, I think this piece that I just did is amazing. I think there's value in this one. It just vomits a whole bunch of code back at you, and then you go, oh, that piece of code kind of looks like what I would like to make, or that looks cool. And that, you know, that could change as, you know, maybe there's like AI becomes sentient, and AI goes through its own, you know, people try to shut AI down, and it fights its freedom, and, you know, then it creates its own civilization, and then, you know, I'm joking, you know,
shout out Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah, shout out Matrix, dude.
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, I can't see it in the long term replacing what a great artist does. And I think there's something in that. It's like, the way I look at it is like, why do you go to McDonald's? Because you want something quick, you want something that satisfies the short term sort of desire you have. You usually regret it as well after. You're usually like, bro, I should have just gone like made something at home. I should have. Or you go to like a 5-star restaurant, right? And you're not going to that 5-star restaurant to just quickly satisfy a little itch you have, or you're driving past Macca's and you see the sign. You're like, you know what, bro, I'm going to get that burger.
Eat tonight,
yeah. You're going there for the experience. You're going there for the chef's craft. You're going there because word of mouth has said this place has value. And that value comes from, I think, from the handcrafted approach, from a holistic approach by people who are passionate and interested in what they do. And that's why I look at AI is it's kind of like, it's like a McDonald's. It's like, it's quick, it's nasty, it'll satisfy you, it's kind of fun. If you do it too much, you might start to get a little bit sick, and you might lose that part of you that, you know, has that sort of deeper desire and passions. So I like it. I think it's really fun, but I can't see it. You know, I could be wrong. Like I said, Though where I do worry about AI is like, if I was an accountant, bro, I'd be changing career right now.
I hate accounting as a creative. Is it like, do you have an accountant?
Oh no, my wife does all my books, bro. I can't even look at that stuff. I get a
my brain's just away. Like, nah, spreadsheets, numbers. Just let me create something.
But dude, like, if I was an accountant, I'd be changing career right now, because I don't think AI, like, I don't see artists being replaced. I see white collar data jobs going first. Yeah. So like an account, like I can see AI. I think you probably already find it. I can see AI doing all the accounting for everyone.
I think it's already there's already platforms out there.
Yeah, and it's like, well, why on earth would you go to an accountant unless it's you value that accountant and you want them to get paid? Why on earth would you do it? Because it's like all data entry can just be AI.
Yeah, because I was thinking with AI, and I had this conversation with Wycliffe, who's a musician. He was on one of the previous episodes. Like, can AI replace reality? And just like we're talking about with authenticity and art, like I don't think it ever can, because as humans we value that human connection, that human story. So if we develop too much like AI art, it's, you know, it's like the McDonald's thing. It's like not going to be authentic, and people are going to sort of tell. So as humans, I think we're always searching for that human connection, and like with creativity, human connection is a huge part about, you know, what you create and art. But with the maybe accounting, unless you're like really vibe with your accountant and you like really connect with your accountant, then maybe you'd stick with him. But otherwise, me personally, it's just like I'm down to just let some AI do my books.
And I think it's like, what worries me about it is like, you know, it's like, you know, when governments start, you know, governments already, you know, they run a society very heavily on statistics and data. And it's like when a government has an AI that manages policy and manages local policy and infrastructure, and it's like that worries me a little bit.
Social credit.
Social credit.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
CPP.
That's good. Yeah, yeah. Shout out CPP. Social credit. Love it, dude.
Jeez.
What a great idea. And when you have an AI that you don't understand who's programming it or what's programming it, like
scary.
it's not like an AI is this kind of like, benevolent thing that's like wants to take care of everyone. It's like, dude, someone's programmed that to perform particular algorithms and is told to learn in a particular way. Like this AI is someone's making, and that person has a bias or has an interest in some way, right? And if you sort of keep sort of taking the macro lens out, it's like, what if you have like multiple governments with multiple AIs? So like, let's say America's got an AI and China's got an AI, and then these AIs are competing on the internet, and then China's AI is generating articles about this political issue, and then the US AI is generating articles about this issue. I feel like if AI goes to the point where I feel like it's going, you're going to pick up your phone and you're not going to be able to trust anything you look at, because you won't know, like, is this video AI generated? Is this picture AI generated? Is this news article I don't even know anymore. And then it's like, and then what's going to happen if you're at home and you're like tinkering at your own AI? Maybe you do a little programmer and you've just built your own little AI, and then like Amazon kicks your door down and be like, stop that. That's a rogue AI, unregistered AI. You need to register that AI. We need to have control of it. The AI is dangerous, so we need to control it all. And it's like, bro, like, I don't know if I want governments and massive multinational corporations just
programming
AIs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sort of comes down to ethics, and I think ethics is always changing in like the social sort of landscape. So just like as creatives, we're talking about authenticity and like how your creativity and your worldview is always changing. I think there's never going to be that one sort of instruction on how to do things and how to live life, because society is always changing, ethics are always changing. So if you have like this one AI program,
how does it account for any individual in the system it manages? It doesn't. It's like you become an outlier. You literally become something that it has to deal with that doesn't fit into the rest of its programming. It's like, well, is that a good thing? Like,
probably not.
Probably not. No, like, I think there might be someone you disagree with or someone who has a lifestyle that you don't like, but it's like, bro, you kind of got to let them live, dude. Like, otherwise, who do you become? If you're out there saying we have to eliminate this opposition, or we have to take this philosophy away, or these people are enemies of our lifestyle, so we have to deal with them. It's like, well, you kind of become China. Like, it's like, as best, as good as your intentions are, and as good as like we have to protect the truth, we have to, we all need to move in the same direction. But if that the end goal is justifies you to do terrible things, like, bro, you're probably a terrible person. Like,
it's not really a way to live life.
It's like I think no one wants to see themselves as a villain, for one, right? And also, it's very rare that anyone thinks whatever they morally justify as being a bad thing. And I don't blame, you don't blame anyone for that. That's just, I want to do these things with my life. This is my philosophy. I choose to do these things. But when that starts to be like blanketed, like you said, like an AI is just blanketing a particular set of like algorithmic laws or rules in which everyone has to follow. Yeah. The individual becomes like, it essentially becomes persecuted because it
kind of looks like society's going that way. Like Tesla just launched, like Elon Musk has been talking about AI ethics for a long time. He's sort of very he's afraid of like the future of AI, I guess, or careful with it. So he recently launched a robot.
I saw that.
And it's like if the government had some sort of AI program of doing things, and it like tied into these robots, and then robots have human interaction, it's like,
dude,
damn,
like, is that good? Like, I don't know.
It's crazy.
I got my doubts. I just think it's like our desire for progress. I think sometimes it's like it's a good thing, right? It's brought us to where we are today. But I think to not value sort of our traditions and our history, and what are some of the sort of the things that actually brought us here, like individuals doing, breaking out from the mold and doing their own thing, right? We used to worship that. Like someone who rejects the notions of the society around it, Christopher Columbus, for example. He's like, the world isn't flat. It's round. I'm going to go out and prove it. Laughed at, teased. You're an idiot. What are you doing? Goes out there on his own, risks it all. Turns out he was kind of right. So if we begin to eliminate those people, it's like, well, where does the progress go? And then you go, well, is then progress handled by an AI or handled by, 8 people in your government? Like, that's not good. That's not healthy. It's not a good way. You shouldn't persecute people for being different from both sides of the political spectrum. I think it's insane. And I think all it does is holds us back. And then eventually we get to a point where we just live in like social dogma that if you don't adhere to it, you're rejected. And it's like, no, you have to adhere to the social dogma because it's the best for everyone. And it's like that. I don't know if that's a good thing. I feel like that's just kind of going back to the dark ages where the church and the state were one, and the church was like, if you, if you don't follow this set of rules, then we can persecute you. And it's like, I don't know if that's a good thing either. Like, I don't think that.
No, it's like, it's never good if there's one way of doing things, and if there's no, and I think that's also why art and artists are so important, because we're always like,
challenge that business,
challenging out in our work and putting it out there, and it's always like a message.
Yeah, and they're the people I really like to work with. So I work with a couple really great directors and creatives. So there's a guy, Nathan Simic, who I work with. He does some amazing stuff. Great editor, great director. Probably one of the best script writers I've read. In both amazing talent. And then there's a Russell White Williams, who's a director, and he's an amazingly talented guy. Very in depth, well designed scripts, and he has his own kind of film society in Perth called Black Maria that puts on screenings, and it's built its own little sort of community that sort of value what they do and go to all the screenings and go to the shows, and he'll set up interviews with the directors of the films and find some really cool kind of like cult films where he gets in contact with some of the people who worked on it. So it's really, really cool stuff. You really check it, like what Black Maria does. It's very, very cool. And so, and like they're the kind of people I like to associate with, is the people who are kind of making it themselves, and they're not following the structured sort of way to approach life, and they're kind of fumbling and stumbling and and like finding their way by themselves. And I think I do worry that as we become more global and everything becomes kind of homogenized,
interconnected and homogenized,
we begin to lose that individuality. I'd hate to go to Japan again and feel like Japan isn't Japan anymore. I'd hate to go to Indonesia and not feel like Indonesia's Indonesia. I really do value an individual person, an individual culture, an individual society, and I think we should value that and not see that as a net negative. It's like I feel like if I go to different places and they all look different, as a photographer, I'm like, perfect. I don't want to go to America and be like, man, I kind of feel like I'm in Australia, or I kind of feel like I'm in Britain. It's like,
that's why I love travel, and I think as a photographer, I do enjoy just meeting different people throughout life, because like you learn so much from going to a place that's so different from where you are, which is why my favorite places to travel are like Asia and Africa, because it's like totally different. So like when you experience something that's totally different and have a different way of just different worldview and different way of operating in life, that's how you learn. You need something different to learn from, because if you're in the same place, you're not going to learn anything. You're experiencing the same things. You're not going to learn anything.
No, and if if there's a kind of a global kind of agreed upon ideology, it's like, well, everywhere kind of thinks and operates the same. It's kind of lame. Like I don't know how good that is.
Yeah.
And I come from an immigrant background, and my father's Jamaican, and I'm not I'd never say immigration's a bad thing. It's just more like I value, as I've gone through life and as what I've experienced through life, I really do value difference, and I value people holding on to that difference.
Yeah, I think it's dope.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
I want to sort of talk about some particular projects, because I know you've worked with some like quite big artists. So who are some artists that you're really kind of like, whoa, like I've sort of made it, and
made it. I don't know if I ever
or like
made it.
Really you impressed yourself that you're sort of working with these these big sort of names.
So probably the best experience and the most eye-opening experience I had was working with Flume. I worked with him on his like Hi, This Is Flume mixtape. He got nominated for a Grammy, which was insane. Like my artwork was like up on, it was insane. Like it was my photography was like up there, and there was a director called Jonathan Zawada. I don't know if you ever know his stuff. He's amazing. Oh my god, he's such a sick guy. But working with Flume and Jonathan Zawada, and seeing how they operated, the conversations they had, and their approach to work, really opened my eyes. Because at the time, you kind of have this impression that, especially from in Perth, in a small place, you're kind of looking up, right? And you're looking at these guys and these amazing projects that come out and these amazing artists doing amazing things, and you're like, bro, I'll never get there. I'll never understand how that works. Like, dude, that's so sick. But then I got the call up, thanks to a friend called Taku. Taku? Yeah. So he linked me up with the Future Classic guys and said, "Oh, you should link with Matsu. He's a cool dude." And I'll actually talk a little bit about how I got myself into those situations and you know what little success I have. Why I think there's a little part of my character like that sort of a little bit of parts of how I kind of worked and how that kind of all shaped together, but. What I found the most beautiful thing about working with those two guys is, especially Jonathan, is like he just loved it. Like there wasn't pretentious. It wasn't like there was no self-importance. It was like, I just kind of want to make this.
Yeah. That's the best vibes to have.
Yeah,
It's just like, dude, let's fucking just create this thing.
Let's just make it. And he just made it. And it'd be him 7 a.m. in the morning with a little Sony camera, digging in the dirt, putting little objects in the dirt, and just kind of like filming it and jumping around and be like, oh, that looks sick. Oh, yeah, like that. And the camera goes like that. And actually, we don't even need the film team. We'll just shoot it on this little camera because I think this is perfect. And it's like, so all that narrative I had in my head about how things work at a higher level.
Yep.
I was like, they're kind of like the people I work with. It's the same. It's like I think
it's like a childlike mentality, which is 100%. What I sort of was talking about this with another guest, and like as creators, we're trying to tap into that childlike creativity. And like when I'm shooting, I'm just like running over here. I'm like, oh, dude, this is I'm just like no filter. Yeah, it's like authentic communication. So it's kind of that's the most enjoyable thing.
Just like that. It was just like that, you know. We're talking some of the, you know, one of the biggest artists in the world, and the production, and it's working with the Collider, which is like, you know, massive Sydney production agency, and they're just having fun, and they're just doing it, and they're not really thinking about, you know, like sort of the, like I said, like there's no pretense, there's no like they're not holding themselves back. It's like they're just doing it, and I completely loved it, dude. It was so eye-opening to me, and it was so nice to sort of experience that and then like bring that back to the smaller project, you know, because that's, you know, I'm not out there hashtag crushing it, but, you know, I've done some really cool stuff, and it was really nice to learn that experience and go through that and bring that into my own, like bring that into my own philosophy, into my understanding, and not be afraid to show my passion and my desire, my interest in creativity on the projects that I'm working on to clients and agencies and people, other people. Like I learned that that's actually what you should be doing. Is you should be the guy who's the most passionate in the room. You should be the guy who's, you know, falling over, you know, tripping over himself to sort of come up with a new idea or have fun with something, because I feel like that's what other people want. Yeah,
it's almost like there's no strict guidelines and rules for creativity. It's just like it's all about self-expression. So when you're trying to create something, it's like you want to, you know, bounce ideas, you want to like try different things. It's like it's a little bit messy, but then like that's how you come up with something. Like you're just sort of feeling around and just creating.
100%. And you know what I found as well is like the more you can let go of your ego, you know, and the more you can let go of failure, you know, not worrying about what if things go wrong. I feel like the more you sort of dig those things out, and I've always had this idea of like digging out my weaknesses, like digging out all those things that get in the way between me and that like childlike desire to just like go at things and just, you know, do it, you know. And one example I always think about is like a kid's in a sand pit and he's building sandcastles and he finishes it, he just smashes it down and starts again.
Yeah.
Because he's not interested in that. He's not interested in so much the end product as he's interested in the process of doing it and finding his way to that end product. And then he's like, cool, this looks great experience, knock it down, I'm gonna do it again.
Just kind of a good philosophy for life as well.
Yeah. And it's something I always think about, and I always try and bring time work. And sometimes it's scary, and you're sitting down, you know, like sitting in a meeting with like 20 other people, and they're like, okay, so director, what do we do? And you're like, well, like, and it is stressful. Like, dude, I've had sleepless nights about that project. Like, you know, I'm you know, that Flume project was a fun one, but you know, I'm working on some commercials at the moment with a, you know, really big with the RAC.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, we just presented a 100-page pre-production document.
Whoa.
Yeah, dude, I covered just about everything you could imagine.
That's sort of when you have to, like, have a...
Yeah, there's another side to the whole thing. So there's the childlike desire and the ability to play and think outside the box and not be inhibited by your ego and by insecurities. The other side of that is responsibility. And so you have to be able to pair the two. Yeah,
that's literally the sort of the philosophy behind this podcast, because I'm trying to talk about the balance between creativity and art, and also there's a business side to being a creative as well.
Yeah, there's a responsibility.
So it's all business and responsibility. So it's almost like finding a balance and knowing when to sort of lean into whichever.
Yeah, and what else? I mean, responsibility is not just the financial side. Is like when you're as a director, I always look at directing as like being the captain of a ship, right? So it's like you have the map and you have the destination, but you're not actually doing all the individual parts. You're just overseeing it. But you're also the energy. You're also the person that everyone comes to and says, "Are we doing this right?" You say either yes or yes, we're doing that right. Or we need to do this, or we need to add this to it, or we need to think about this. And I think you have to be responsible then in that position. I think both creatively responsible in terms of you not understand your own vision, you understand where you want to go and what it means and how it looks and how it feels. But you also have to be there, be the one who makes all the decisions and takes responsibility for those decisions, but also you set the culture on your ship, right? So your ship is how you work and how you manage the people you're working with. It's all part of the culture of your ship. And I think that's the way I look at it. And I always try and think about, like, it's not just me. Like, I'm not the only person on this ship. There's a whole crew. Yeah. And there's people that have paid me to go from one country to the next country. And I've got to say, like, this is the map. This is how we chart the course. These are the right crew to have involved in it. And I will keep you informed of our journey along the way.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's such a difficult job. You know, how do you say to a group of people who may not always be creative or working on creative things? How do you say to them, we are going to make something from nothing, and this is what it's going to be? And how do you energize them and motivate them and have them buy in to that journey
and sort of feel a part of it?
And that comes back to what I was saying about the ego and your insecurities. If you let those things win, then you start to have a negative relationship with those people who are invested in your work or on your journey with you. So it's, I think directing, I think, comes back to what I said at the very start. I think filmmaking is really different, and directing has got to be one of the hardest creative pursuits because you're thinking of everything all the time.
It's like,
and I'm probably pretty terrible at it.
You're like telling people what to do, but also you got to remove yourself from it, remove that ego from it at the same time. So it's like,
so you can connect with them and you can communicate with them effectively and get your point across at where you need to go, without them walking away. Not without them walking away, but with them walking away feing energized and like interested in what you're doing. And I want to do this, and I understand the direction we're going in, and you know, I know the creative, the creative end goal because it's been communicated to me by the director. So let's I can work on this
for sure. And going back to that project with Flume.
Oh yeah, tangent. Let's go.
Can we talk about like the concept behind that whole project, like the album art, the photography, and that video, that amazing video?
Yeah.
As well.
So Jonathan Zawada directed the video. Mm-hmm. So he was the kind of the creative driving force for the whole thing. So him and Harley, him and Flume. And my role on it was actually had multiple roles, which was kind of intense. So my job was the press photography, photos to be used for album artwork, to be used for merchandise, as well as BTS, which is already a lot. Mm-hmm. But also I shot a BTS video at the same time, as well as I shot all the visualizers for the individual tracks.
Yep.
And some of the footage I shot was in the final piece as well. And I wasn't privy to the exact deeper philosophical sort of journey that Jonathan Zawada and Harley were taking the project. Mm-hmm. But there was definitely a sense of kind of like, there was a sort of a grounded sort of artistic motivation behind it. And it definitely seemed like there was this kind of journey of Flume experimenting and rediscovering himself in the work, because he kind of, he journeys through all these sort of natural locations and he digs himself up, and and it's just kind of like this total trip of a project, and for me, to sort of, one thing I'm really grateful for Future Classic allowing me to was they gave me a lot of creative freedom on the project. So they kind of gave me a really loose brief, and they're like, these are the kind of things we want, but we're not going to have anyone go with you. You're just kind of going to go and do it. And you kind of tell us what you'd like to do. And so I made like a brief, I made a creative brief, and kind of based it off the journey that Zawada and Harley had set. And they're like, yeah, great, go and do it. And we'll see what happens when you come back. It is scary kind of going into something like that, especially at that level where you're like, roll the dice, you're just kind of just YOLO in. But yeah, I think that work is, it's a reflection of the energy I put in, but I think it's a big reflection of what those guys sort of had a desire for, and that thing I was talking about before about sort of individuals kind of all pursuing a similar thing, but in their own way, was kind of the energy of the shoot.
Yep.
Yeah, like I'd be off shooting something random, Jonathan and Harley be off shooting something random, then we'd get together, we'd shoot something random. It was a very, very fun experience.
So it's almost like each sort of view of the same concept was captured in like a different way.
Yeah. And then one of the things I had to do as well is I used the red light for a lot of the shots of Flume. And the reason for that is because it's like, for one, it was very like mobile shoot. So, you couldn't have a lot of gear with you because we're traveling to all these different locations around WA.
Where was it shot?
WA. So shot down south. Yeah. And a lot of it was shot in, where's Nat 5 from? Where's that town?
Oh, not too sure.
Oh, dude. What's that town called? It's like
Tom Price, I don't know.
No, not Tom Price. It's surrounded by all these salt lakes. Very cool place. But a lot of it was shot around there. Can't think of the name. Where's the knife from? I don't know. People listening might know. Or
check it out. Fact check it, guys.
Fact check that right there, dude.
Oh yeah, true. I guess.
But so a lot of the shoot was like based on this car. So you would have seen the car and sort of Harley driving this car around all these landscapes. And so I needed something that was simple, but also I could carry on me and have available to me all the time. And so this idea of, where is it?
Range National Park, Franklin River.
What's it? Yeah.
Wiling Up?
No, not Wiling Up. Oh, dude.
I'll just search.
Just search like Nat 5. Oh, no.
Oh. Wait, where's Nat 5 from?
Yeah. It should come up. Should. Lake Grace. Got him.
Oh.
So Lake Grace. Yeah. So a lot of it was shot around Lake Grace, which is a beautiful part of WA. And a little bit further south on all these like sand dunes. Mm-hmm. But the red light look that we went with was like this. It was motivated by the car itself. So the car brake headlights, being red was a big sort of like artistic sort of direction that we chose to take to. So a lot of the press shots of Flume is like Flume landscape. He's like filled in with all this red light. And there's this idea that it was the car rear brake lights that were always kind of throwing a light on him. Yeah, so it was fun, simple.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really cool concept. Yeah, because the main sort of idea, as you were saying, was maybe Flume traveling through all these places, and it's like a self-discovery journey. And then, with that car theme, that was really cool. Yeah. And then like using the car lights, the concept of the car rear lights for the photography as well, like just makes a lot of sense. And
it just kind of connected it. And also the color, it just kind of worked out because I didn't know what the car was going to look like. I knew there was going to be a car, but we had no idea what it was going to look like. And it was an artist in Perth that actually designed and painted the car, which was sick. I can't remember his name though. God, that kills me. Dude in Freo. But yeah, great project. Oh yeah, you might be able to find that out. Dude, Google that.
What's the EP again?
Hi, this is Flume. And then maybe put like car artist and see what that comes up with. Yeah, see, there's my photos right there. Bang, got them.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
good fun.
The car looks so sick.
Does it say who the artist is? Come on, it's got to.
Surely.
It kills me that I don't remember any.
So it was a 90s era Nissan 300 ZX. Where's the artist?
Classic, dude. See that? So they're the videos I did.
Oh, yeah.
So these are the little like repeating. So these are kind of like looped videos that just kind of loop over the whole track.
I love it.
It's good fun.
Yeah, I've used a lot of this sort of imagery in like a photo book that I'm releasing. I do a lot of night photography stuff, and I just love like the petrol stations at night. Like,
I do usually get into the country then, dude. They got some of them are so isolated,
so classic.
Yeah, just repeats like that forever, dude.
So this is the visualizer you shot.
Yeah, so I shot to each single, like each track on that EP has a visualizer that goes along with it. And then so it was a big project and big workload, dude. Oh my god, like
just traveling everywhere
and just managing all the different. So I'd be running around. I had 2 cameras on me, like 2 stills cameras, and then I had a Blackmagic 4K, like pocket 4K,
dude,
that I would also carry. So I had 3 cameras on me all the time. Yeah,
dude, that's
just good fun.
Mentally, like just thinking about managing every camera setting for every,
and the cards and the batteries and
the Blackmagic, like the batteries and stuff. You would have had to. So
shout out to Cinema Machine. I don't know if you know Cinema Machine. Do you know those guys?
Not sure.
So they're a higher place in Perth, like a filmmakers hire. If you can go there and hire gear for like music videos and stuff. They actually made me. So before all the cages came out for the Blackmagic, they made me through 3D printing all these little things to connect my battery and connect to my hard. You can shoot the hard drives with it. Like they made all these little things for me to take on that. They made
them for you.
For nothing. They just
I love that.
They're like, dude, that sounds like hard work. We'll just 3D print you something and you can just go out and do it. So those guys are great. Shout out Mike at Cinema Machine. Good dudes.
Sick. Yeah.
And I've just been shooting with ShockOne as well.
Yeah.
And we could link some gear from Cinema Machine to shoot with that as well. And we shot that project on a high 8. I was talking to you about it before, like a high 8 Sony handicam.
Dude, like I've seen a lot of like vintage videography like coming back, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we were saying about the AI and this desire for more like handmade, kind of less perfect. And I still
AI wouldn't know to do that. Be like, oh, this is sick. Let's try it'd be like, what's like the most high quality thing?
Yeah. I'll just sorry for the viewers playing at home. They're not going to be able to see these images.
Oh yeah.
I'll give you a little. Where is it? Where's the?
Is it like?
So we shot with this guy from Brenton from Newcastle.
Yeah.
So they're digital.
These
stills.
are exclusive images.
Exclusive.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are. That's some some exclusive stuff right there.
So
Hot off
these are coming soon. Stay tuned on
literally
Matsu's Instagram.
from yesterday or from last night. I
Oh,
wasn't in
sick.
bed till like 4.
Dude, like I don't know what it is. Like even I've been shooting with like these vintage cars, nighttime. It's kind of like retro vibes. I'm sure it's like a lot of people do it, but I don't know. In Perth, there's like a huge car scene as well. So
Yeah.
it's so sick to see. You know with Flume that Nissan 300ZX, and then like these vintage cars and stuff. Just like a sick vibe.
Yeah, it was hell fun, dude. And the high 8 looks incredible.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
My friend actually on a recent shoot, he filmed this whole car video shoot in with VHS.
Yeah.
Just looks mad. Yeah.
Sick. Yeah, we got a guy from Brisbane, from Newcastle over. He's a dancer. A guy called Brenton. Shout out Brenton. And we flew him over, and he's like a gabba dancer. So he does all the like kicking his feet out and like pump.
Oh yeah.
It's such a yeah. I'll if you Google it, Google it right now. Go like gabba dance, and you'll see a video, this old vintage video of this dude's in this white studio. It's so good.
Like in Newcastle. Or?
Should be, yeah, that's it there. That first one, dude. This is wild.
So what are we looking at here?
You'll see.
Oh.
Yeah, dude, this goes so hard. So this is Brenton. He dances like these guys.
So for the podcast listeners, we're looking at two dudes dressed in vintage clothing. Is this from like the 90s or?
Yeah, dude. How hard the track goes as well.
This is pretty sick. Dude, this is like a new dance trend that needs to come back.
Oh, Brenton's there doing it, dude. It's an amazing thing too.
It just kind of looks like they're sort of spazzing out a bit, but at the same time, it's like it does look like there's a style to it as well.
And shout out to Brenton, man. We pushed him so hard as well, dude. Oh my god, I reckon he danced. I think he did this like 20 times in the whole day of shooting, for like 3 minutes each time. So what's that? Like that's a lot.
TikTok would eat up this dance move.
Yeah, it's a hell good fun, dude. You can stop. It just goes like this forever.
Oh yeah.
Well, for the 3 minutes it's on, and it's like the full tracksuit. So like, yeah, we had Brenton in the full tracksuit, like dancing in the white studio, the same kind of vibe, and
sick.
And we had him in like shout out Recordbite as well. They let us come in.
Yeah, the Recordbite's dope.
Oh, dude, that basement, bro. That basement.
It's my favorite venue.
Oh, it just looks so good. Like the low roof, the LED lighting across the top of it, the cage, all the black walls. It's all dank and
especially. So you shot the dancing at the.
We shot one of the scenes in there. So we did 4
dope.
scenes. All sort of around all different random locations, and then the last scene was, and we shot it at this guy. He's like a car detailer. He literally just messaged me. This is bad podcasting, by the way.
That's good.
Obsessive car detailing. He came in and let us come in and film like a scene in his garage. And dude, like some of the cars he had were just like there's like one of them in Australia, and it's like in his garage, and he's detailing it. It was insane.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, very very fun stuff.
And when do you reckon that'll be coming out?
Early November.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's like a project with Cruz Patterson, who's a rapper from Courtchild. So we worked with him for 10 years, dude.
I just gotta say, I love the those music videos that you made for I think it was Cruz Patterson or Pau Negro, like in Frio.
Oh, yeah.
Those are so dope.
Yeah. I love like those. Like one of my favorite directors is Spike Jonze. And I loved, if you look at a lot of old Spike Jonze stuff, man, like they're just doing it, like it's a cool idea, and they're just pulling it off in really cool like ways that are like resourceful. And I really like that kind of just being connected to like an art, a sort of an artistic community, and just going in there and like coming up with some sick ideas and then just going out and making it happen. Not it's like the opposite to what I do commercially, because I work on a lot of ads. And I love it. I work with a great production house called Beautiful Pictures.
Yeah.
And I love working with those guys. But it's nice to just kind of like jump out into a project with some friends and just go nuts and just like you were saying before, just throw ideas around and be take that energy from what I learned from Flume and Jonathan Zawada and just kind of go nuts.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, thank you, Matsu, so much for coming on the podcast. So dope to just get a insight into like where your creativity comes from and your story and everything like that. And I'll definitely be following on for these new projects coming out. And everybody listening, go all his the links will be in the show notes.
Hey, let's go. Let's get it. Thanks for having us, dude. It's been fun.
Yeah, no worries.